go-to for cutting through the noise and getting straight to the insights that matter. We know you love those aha moments, and today we're plunging into a truly significant topic. India's brand new criminal justice system, the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita 2023, BNS for short. Our mission today is to sift through, well, a stack of legal commentary, official texts, and even some fresh Supreme Court rulings on the BNS. It just became effective July 1st, 2024. And this isn't about memorizing dry legal definitions, It's about understanding the core changes that affect everything from how property is protected to the delicate balance of religious harmony and even the very nature of trust in a rapidly evolving society. We're here to give you the shortcut to understanding what truly matters in this monumental legal shift.
Indeed. And the BNS, it represents a significant modernization of India's legal landscape. I mean, finally moving beyond the colonial-era Indian Penal Code. While much of it builds upon its predecessor, there are crucial updates and shifts in emphasis. Today, we'll guide you through its nature, scope, and applicability, particularly highlighting how elements like intent and knowledge, well, they've become paramount in proving guilt. We'll uncover fascinating changes like the brand new offense of snatching, explore the severe penalties for organized crime, and delve into the intricate details of forgery. You'll see how the law tries to balance the protection of individual rights with fundamental freedoms, aiming for, a more streamlined and clearer framework.
All right, let's unpack this then. We're talking about the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita 2023. Why should this be on your radar? It's not just a legislative update. It's a foundational change that impacts every citizen. What's the big picture here?
Well, the BNS, now effective, as you said, it aims for modernized language, clearer gradations in offenses, and, importantly, strengthened penalties where society deems them necessary. Its primary objective, especially in the chapters we're delving into today, is sort of threefold: to robustly protect ownership and possession rights, to deter the coercive or violent taking of property, and critically, to safeguard religious harmony within a diverse society. What's particularly fascinating about this transition, I think, is how courts will initially navigate these new waters. They'll inevitably rely on established jurisprudence, legal precedent from the older Indian Penal Code. It's essentially creating a bridge between the old legal understanding and the new statutory text. And this raises an important question, doesn't it? How quickly will BNS-specific precedents emerge and truly carve out its unique identity, moving beyond the shadow of the IPC? This transitional period, well, it's going to be vital for understanding the true lived impact of these changes for both citizens and the legal system.
That's a crucial point about the courts building on past interpretations. Yeah. Now, before we dive into property, which is tangible and often at the forefront of criminal cases, let's look at something deeply rooted in society and, quite sensitive: the protection of religious sentiments. Okay, we're moving into a particularly nuanced area here. The BNS chapter on offenses relating to religion, for all of these sections, 298 to 302, they're designed to protect religious harmony by penalizing intentional insults or disruptions. These are generally public offenses. Here's a legal term to maybe clarify. They're usually non-cognizable, which means the police can't just make an arrest or start investigating without a magistrate's order or, a formal complaint from the victim. They're also typically bailable, meaning the accused can usually get out on bail relatively quickly. Punishments generally range from, say, 1 to 3 years imprisonment and more a fine.
Right. And the crucial takeaway here, which the Supreme Court has already emphasized in recent rulings, is the absolute requirement of deliberate intent and malice. These laws apply only where there is clear, demonstrable intent or knowledge to insult religion or wound religious feelings. This is a vital balancing act, isn't it? With the fundamental freedom of speech guaranteed under Article 19(1) of the Constitution, the law is not designed to stifle criticism or debate, or even artistic expression that might cause some discomfort. It's specifically aimed at preventing malicious and deliberate acts of religious insult. It draws a clear line. Honest criticism is generally allowed, but deliberate incitement to religious hatred, that's not.
Okay, so intent and malice are absolutely central. Let's maybe start with Section 298 then, injuring or defiling place of worship.
Yes, Section 298. This makes it an offense to destroy, damage, or defile any place of worship or any object held sacred by any class of persons. But crucially, it must be done with the intent of thereby insulting the religion of any class of persons, or with the knowledge that such an act is likely to be considered an insult.
So we're talking about physical desecration here.
Exactly. Physical damage or defilement. The key ingredients are: 1, the existence of a sacred place or object; 2, an act of physical damage or defilement; and 3, that critical mens re on the mental element. So the intent to insult a religion or knowledge that the act would likely be regarded as such. Mere accidental damage, for instance, isn't covered.
Right. So, for example, if someone deliberately smears, say, cow dung on a mosque wall, specifically intending to outrage Muslims and insult their faith, that seems like a clear violation under S.298. But if a construction worker maybe accidentally chips a temple statue while working nearby, without any intent whatsoever to cause religious hurt, S.298 wouldn't apply. It's about the deliberate malice, not just the outcome.
Precisely. The focus is on the state of mind.
Okay, moving beyond physical acts then. Let's focus on one of the most significant sections in this area. Section 299. This targets deliberate and malicious acts. And this can be words, signs, visual representations, or even electronic communications now intended to outrage religious feelings. Punishment here can go up to 3 years. And it specifically targets acts aimed at insulting a class of citizens, right? An entire community, not just an individual person.
That's exactly right. This provision closely mirrors the older IPC Section 295A, which has a long history of interpretation. What's fascinating here is how the Supreme Court has recently interpreted this, even under the new framework, essentially confirming the high threshold. In the ruling of Imran Pratapgadi v. Gujarat, which seems to be a 2025 case mentioned in the sources, the court actually quashed charges under S-299, among others. They stated it was, and I think the quote was, ridiculous to say, the appellant intended to outrage any class's feelings. His poem merely predicted a possible public reaction.
Wow, ridiculous to say. That's strong language from the court.
It is. And it powerfully reinforces that mere criticism or an unflattering depiction, absent deliberate and malicious intent, will not attract S.299. It strongly protects freedom of expression by setting a very high bar for proving that malicious intent. It's not about whether people felt offended, it's about whether the accused intended to cause that specific deliberate outrage against a religious class.
So to visualize this for you listening, publishing maybe a satirical cartoon mocking a religious ritual, but doing it with the express aim of offending a community of worshipers that could be prosecuted. However, a critical but non-malicious commentary on certain religious practices, even if it causes some discomfort or disagreement among some people, would likely not be covered under S.299 if that specific intent to insult is absent. The distinction hinges entirely on proving that deliberate malice, not just the unfortunate outcome of causing offense.
Exactly. The burden of proof for malice is high.
Okay, what about Section 300? Disturbing a religious assembly. This seems a bit different.
It is slightly different, yes. S-300 is about protecting the peace and sanctity of a religious gathering. It punishes anyone who voluntarily causes disturbance to an assembly lawfully engaged in religious worship or ceremonies. The maximum punishment is 1 year. It's a relatively minor offense compared to S.299.
And does this require the same level of intent to insult?
No, importantly, it doesn't require an intent to insult religion or wound feelings. It's about the act of voluntary disturbance itself. So, for instance, intentionally shouting loud political slogans right next to an outdoor Hindu ritual, causing it to stop or be significantly disrupted, that would likely fall under S-300. But, say, a loud, unexpected cough from someone in the assembly, even if it was momentarily disruptive, wouldn't qualify because it wasn't a voluntary act intended to cause disturbance.
Right, makes sense. Then there's Section 301, trespassing on burial places. This protects the sanctity of graves and funerary sites?
Yes. S-301 protects places of burial, places set apart for funeral rites, or even human corpses themselves from indignity. The punishment is up to 1 year. The key here is trespassing or offering indignity with the intent to wound the feelings or insult the religion of any person, or with the knowledge that such feelings would likely be hurt or the religion insulted. So again, that mental element is crucial. Accidental trespass, like a tourist getting lost and wandering into a graveyard without ill intent, is not covered. It criminalizes deliberate affronts to funerary rites and the respect we generally afford to the dead and places of remembrance.
Okay, and finally in this chapter, Section 302, you mentioned this earlier as being distinct from SP1299. How so?
Yes, Section 302 is distinct because it explicitly targets the deliberate intention of wounding the religious feelings of any specific person, not an entire class or community, but an individual. The maximum punishment here is also 1 year.
So it's more personal.
Exactly. Supreme Court in that Imran Pratapgadi case also clarified this distinction quite clearly. It explicitly states that for S-302, words must be uttered with the deliberate intention of wounding the religious feelings of a specific individual. A poem addressed broadly to society, like in that case, wouldn't meet the stringent test because it lacks that direct personal targeting required under S-302. This underscores the very specific personal and intentional nature required for this particular offense. It's about a direct, malicious verbal attack on an individual's faith.
So, for example, if you were to go up to an individual directly to their face and say something like, your religious beliefs are utterly foolish and misguided, with the clear and explicit intent to wound their religious feelings, personally, that's what S302 seems to target. What really stands out to me across all these sections, then, is that underlying intent. Keep coming back to it. The law is truly drawing, or attempting to draw, a clear line between mere offense, disagreement, or even general criticism, and malicious, deliberate action specifically aimed at causing religious insult or disruption. It seems like a high bar to prove, which I suppose is necessary to ensure free expression isn't unduly curtailed.
It is a high bar, and intentionally so. Balancing religious harmony with free speech is always a delicate act for any legal system.
Right. Okay, so from this highly sensitive and a very intent-driven realm of religious offenses, where the mind of the accused is paramount, let's shift our focus now to the very tangible world of property crimes, where the lines are often drawn by physical acts and, well, clearer definitions of taking what isn't yours. So we're moving into the backbone of property law now, starting with the most basic. Taking what isn't yours, Section 303, theft. It's the foundation, as you said, but the BNS seems to add a modern twist.
Yes. At its core, theft under S. 303 remains largely consistent with the older IPC definition. It's about dishonestly taking movable property out of someone's possession without their consent by moving that property. The fundamental ingredients are still there. 1, dishonest intention to take. 2, movable property. 3, it must be in the possession of another. 4, lack of consent from that person. And 5, the actual movement of the property, however slight. Courts will absolutely continue to rely on established precedents, like the classic K and Mara case, which emphasized dishonest intent, meaning an intent to cause wrongful gain to oneself or wrongful loss to another. That hasn't changed.
Okay, so the core definition is stable. What's the twist then?
The twist, and it's quite fascinating, is in the punishment, particularly for minor offenses. BNS introduces the possibility of community service as a punishment for petty theft, specifically for a first offense where the stolen property is valued under $5,000. This signals a more reform-oriented approach, perhaps aiming for rehabilitation over incarceration for minor first-time crimes.
That's interesting. Community service for petty theft.
It is. However, the BNS also gets stricter on the other end. For repeat convictions of theft, it introduces harsher terms, imprisonment that can extend up to 5 years and a fine up to $10,000. So it highlights this dual focus, potential rehabilitation for minor first offenders, but stronger deterrence for those who repeatedly commit theft.
That's a really interesting dual approach. Okay, so let's picture this. A home buyer visits a house for sale. They see a nice decorative flower pot on the porch. Secretly, they pick it up, intending to take it home without asking or paying. The moment she moves that pot from its place, even just a little bit, with that dishonest intent, that's theft under Section 303.
Precisely.
But if she just admired it, maybe even touched it, but didn't move it with the intent to take it away, no theft yet. It's that physical movement coupled with the dishonest intent that seals it.
Correct. The act and the intent must coincide.
Okay, now this is a big one. You mentioned it earlier. Section 304 introduces a specific new offense in the BNS, snatching. What makes this different from regular theft under S303? It feels like it fills a gap maybe between simple theft and more violent crimes like robbery.
That's exactly right. You've hit the nail on the head. Snatching, as defined in Section 304, is a specialized form of theft. It occurs when the offender suddenly or forcibly seizes or grabs movable property from a person or their immediate possession or control. It's essentially, as you suggested, an inchoate form of robbery. It involves a degree of force or speed directed at the person, but without the sustained violence, threat of death, or grievous hurt or actual serious injury that would elevate it to full-blown robbery.
Okay, so force or speed, but not quite robbery level. What's the punishment?
The punishment is imprisonment for up to 3 years, and the offender is also liable to a fine. The Home Ministry, in the source materials we looked at, clarifies this distinction quite well. They give the example. A quick snatch of a handbag from someone's grasp while walking down the street, that's snatching. Whereas if someone pulls out a knife and demands the bag at knife point, that escalates to extortion or robbery because of the immediate explicit threat of serious harm.
Got it.
This new section, S304, clearly codifies and clarifies those very common street-level grab-and-run thefts. It makes it easier, perhaps, for law enforcement to categorize and prosecute what is, unfortunately, a pretty common urban crime.
Right. So an illustrative scenario for you listening. Imagine a person on a motorcycle speeds by a pedestrian. As they pass, the rider forcibly pulls off the pedestrian's gold necklace in one swift motion, then speeds away. It clearly qualifies as snatching under S304 because it's a sudden, forceful taking from the person's possession. Now, if that rider had stopped, maybe threatened the pedestrian with harm, or caused actual significant injury beyond just the force of the grab itself, it might well cross the line into robbery instead. The swiftness and the force of the seizure from the person are the key elements here.
Exactly. It targets that specific modality of theft.
Okay, so moving on, Section 305 deals with theft in specific, maybe more vulnerable settings, like your home or on public transport or even in a place of worship. Why the enhanced penalty here?
It's generally due to the perceived breach of sanctity, privacy, or the trust inherent in these locations. S305 covers theft committed in a few specific contexts. 1, in any building, tent, or vessel used as a human dwelling. 2, theft from a means of transport, like stealing from a vehicle or its cargo. 3, theft of an idol or icon from a place of worship. Or 4, theft of government property.
And the punishment is higher.
Yes, significantly higher than basic theft. The punishment can extend up to 7 years imprisonment and also includes a fine. And we're seeing this have a real-world impact already. The source material mentions that law enforcement in Telangana, for example, is now preferring to use S305B theft from transport for vehicle theft cases, especially those stolen from public roads or parking lots.
Instead of the basic theft section.
Exactly, instead of the lighter S3032, which might have been used previously. This reflects a clear push towards using the BNS for harsher penalties for these kinds of common but disruptive crimes like vehicle theft from public places.
That shows how these changes are being actively implemented. All right, what about Section 306? Theft by a clerk or servant. This seems straightforward when an employee steals from their employer.
Yes, at its core, this is fundamentally about a breach of duty and trust inherent in the employer-employee relationship. The accused must be employed as a clerk or servant, and the property stolen must be in the possession of their master or employer. The punishment here can also go up to 7 years and includes a fine. It recognizes the aggravated nature of theft when committed by someone placed in a position of trust.
So a simple example. A store cashier is entrusted with handling the day's cash takings. Instead of depositing, say, $10,000 down, they pocket it for themselves. That's a pretty clear case of theft by a servant under S306.
Absolutely. The entrustment and subsequent dishonest conversion are key.
Now, Section 307 sounds quite serious. Theft after preparation made for causing death, hurt, or restraint. This combines theft with violent planning.
Yes, this is significantly more serious. The crucial element here is the preparation to cause death or hurt or restraint or fear of these things in order to commit the theft or to escape after committing it or even just to retain the property taken.
So the violence doesn't even need to actually happen.
Correct. The planning or preparation itself, coupled with the commission of theft, is enough to trigger this section. The potential for violence elevates the crime significantly. The punishment reflects this. Rigorous imprisonment, which may extend to 10 years, plus a fine.
The act itself gives an illustration, doesn't it? Like a thief hiding a loaded pistol under his coat before going to pickpocket someone.
Exactly. The mere act of preparing that potential violence, having the loaded weapon ready for use during the theft or escape, makes it this aggravated offense under S307, even if the pistol is never actually used or even shown.
Okay, shifting from theft to extortion now. Section 308. This is different, right? It's obtaining property through threats and fear, not by outright taking it yourself.
That's the core distinction, yes. Extortion involves intentionally putting a person in fear of some kind of injury. An injury here is defined broadly. It can be physical harm, damage to reputation, or damage to property, either to that person or someone else they care about. And by instilling that fear, the offender dishonestly induces the person to deliver property, or a valuable security, or something signed or sealed which could be converted into a valuable security.
So the victim gives up the property because of the fear.
Precisely. The threat doesn't have to be carried out. The offense is complete once the property is delivered as a result of the fear induced by the threat. Punishment for general extortion is imprisonment up to 7 years, or a fine, or both. And there are even higher penalties, up to 10 years imprisonment, if the threat involves putting someone in fear of death or grievous hurt.
Right. So that classic example. A goon threatens to burn down a shop unless the owner pays protection money every month. The owner, genuinely fearing this, pays up. That's extortion.
Clear case.
But if the goon had, say, held the shopkeeper down while physically taking the money from the till, that would likely escalate beyond extortion.
Yes, that would likely cross the line into robbery, which involves immediate violence or the threat of immediate violence during the taking.
Which brings us neatly to Section 309, robbery. You described this earlier as the flashpoint, where property crime meets violence directly.
Exactly. Robbery is essentially either theft or extortion, but with an added element of immediate violence or the threat of it. So for theft to become robbery, the offender must, during the act of committing the theft or in carrying away the property, voluntarily cause or attempt to cause death, hurt, or wrongful restraint, or the fear of instant death, hurt, or restraint. For extortion to become robbery, the offender must be in the presence of the person put in fear, commit the extortion by putting them in fear of instant death, hurt, or restraint, and thereby induce them to deliver the property then and there. The immediacy is key for extortion robbery.
So the threat has to be immediate and the offender present.
Yes, for extortion to qualify as robbery. The punishment for robbery is rigorous imprisonment up to 10 years, and possibly a fine. It gets even more serious if the robbery is committed on a highway between sunset and sunrise. The punishment can then extend to 14 years. Nighttime highway robbery is seen as particularly dangerous.
And there's a point about accomplices and hurt.
Yes, a very important one. If any hurt is caused by the offender or any accomplices during the commission of the robbery, all persons jointly concerned in committing the robbery can face punishment up to life imprisonment or rigorous imprisonment for up to 10 years. This imposes significant collective liability for any violence used.
Wow. So illustrative examples. A mugger grabs a handbag, theft. The victim resists. The mugger then stabs the victim's arm to stop them resisting, causing hurt. That theft plus hurt, robbery.
Correct.
Or a thug stands right next to someone, threatens to kill them right now unless they hand over their expensive watch and wallet. The victim, terrified, hands them over. That's extortion committed in the presence of the victim, instilling instant fear, robbery.
Perfect examples.
And finally, the most severe of this group, dacoity. Section 310. This is organized, violent robbery by a group. What's the magic number again?
The magic number is 5. Dacoity occurs when 5 or more persons conjointly commit or attempt to commit a robbery. It also applies if the total number of people committing, attempting, or aiding the robbery present at the scene is 5 or more. So maybe only 3 actually do the robbing, but 2 more are acting as lookouts or getaway drivers right there. That still makes 5, so it's dacoity.
And why the specific focus on the number 5?
It reflects the significantly increased danger, potential for violence, and public alarm when robbery is committed by an organized group or gang, rather than individuals acting alone or in smaller numbers. The punishment is correspondingly severe: life imprisonment or rigorous imprisonment for a term up to 10 years, plus a fine.
And there's an even more critical point about murder during dacoity.
Yes, this is extremely serious. If any one of those 5 or more persons commits murder in so committing dacoity, then every single one of them, all persons conjointly committing the dacoity, can be punished with death or life imprisonment or rigorous imprisonment up to 10 years and a fine.
So incredible collective responsibility for murder.
Absolutely. It imposes a very strong form of collective responsibility, often referred to as constructive liability. Joining a dacoity means you could face the death penalty for a murder committed by an accomplice during that crime, even if you didn't pull the trigger yourself.
That's a huge deterrent. So an illustrative scenario. A gang of, say, 6 masked men armed with guns robs a passenger bus on a highway. All 6 are guilty of dacoity.
Yes.
Now, if during that robbery, one of the dacoities shoots and kills the bus conductor who tried to resist, all 6 members of the gang can potentially face the death penalty or life imprisonment under the section.
That's precisely how it works. A very stark example of the law's approach to organized gang violence.
Okay, so we've traced the escalation from simple theft through snatching, extortion, robbery, right up to organized dacoity, with increasing levels of violence, coercion, and collective responsibility. But the law, as you mentioned, doesn't just punish successful crimes. It also targets attempts, and even in some unique cases, preparations, especially for these most dangerous offenses. Let's get into that next. Right, the law is often forward-looking, isn't it? Penalizing those who try to commit serious crimes, not just those who succeed. Section 311 deals with attempts.
Exactly. Section 311 prescribes rigorous imprisonment for up to 7 years, plus a fine, for attempting to commit robbery or attempting to commit dacoity. And it gets more serious if the attempt involves weapons. If the attempt is made while the offender is armed with any deadly weapon, the punishment can extend to 10 years rigorous imprisonment. This highlights the legal concept of inchoate crimes where criminal liability attaches even if the intended crime isn't fully completed, especially when a person has taken a direct step or movement towards committing the crime itself. The law intervenes before the full harm occurs.
So for instance, a group of 4 people, armed with knives and maybe iron rods, tries to stop a car on a lonely road with the clear intent to rob the occupants. But the car manages to speed away before they can actually commit the robbery.
In that scenario, they could certainly be liable under S31 potentially the aggravated part, subsection 2, for armed attempt to commit robbery, facing up to 10 years, even though the robbery itself failed.
Now, here's where you said it gets really interesting earlier, Section 312, making preparation to commit dacoity. Usually, mere preparation for a crime isn't punishable. Why is dacoity treated differently? This seems quite unique.
It is indeed a notable and quite rare exception in criminal law generally. Most legal systems only punish acts that go beyond mere preparation into the realm of attempt. But because of the perceived grave nature of dacoity, its inherently organized, violent character, and the serious threat it poses to public order and safety, the BNS, like the IPC before it, criminalizes even the act of making preparations for its commission.
So the law steps in even earlier than attempt.
Yes. The punishment is rigorous imprisonment for up to 10 years, plus a fine. The primary objective here is what legal scholars call preventive justice. It allows law enforcement to intervene at a very early stage before the dacoity is even attempted, thereby aiming to avert the potential for widespread violence, loss of property, and public terror. Other serious crimes where mere preparation is specifically punishable often involve threats to the state itself, like waging war against the government. This shows the exceptional gravity assigned to dacoity. It's the law effectively saying, this is too dangerous to wait for, we must have the power to stop it before it even starts.
That's a powerful tool for law enforcement, definitely. So that illustrative scenario we touched on, imagine police raid a secluded house. Inside, they find 5 individuals who have gathered unlicensed firearms, ropes, masks, detailed blueprints of a nearby bank, and maybe even notes planning escape routes. They haven't left the house yet, they haven't started driving to the bank, so they aren't yet attempting the robbery.
Correct. But their detailed planning and gathering of tools specifically for the dacoity would constitute sufficient preparation for a charge under S312. This allows authorities to disrupt the criminal enterprise before it can actually materialize and cause harm.
Okay, then Section 313, dacoity with murder. We touched upon this under the main dacoity section, but this provision specifically addresses the consequence when a murder occurs during the dacoity.
Yes. S313 formalizes that extreme collective culpability we discussed. It's a very stringent provision imposing constructive liability for murder on all participants in a dacoity if any one of them commits murder in so committing dacoity. The punishment range is the most severe: death, life imprisonment, or rigorous imprisonment up to 10 years, plus a fine. It reflects the heightened danger and shared responsibility inherent in armed gang robbery that culminates in a death. It's somewhat similar in concept, though distinct in application, to the felony murder rule found in some common law jurisdictions, where participation in certain dangerous felonies can make you liable for a death that occurs during it.
So back to that jewelry shop example. A dacoity is in progress. The shop owner tries to resist or raise an alarm. One of the dacoits, perhaps to silence him or overcome resistance, stabs and kills the owner.
Under S313, all the participating dacoits, the ones inside, the lookout outside, the getaway driver waiting nearby, are potentially liable for that murder, facing the possibility of the death penalty or life imprisonment, even if they didn't personally wield the knife or even intend for anyone to be killed. Their participation in the dacoity itself creates that liability.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. What if you lawfully obtain property, or maybe even just find something that's lost, but then you decide to dishonestly keep it or use it as your own? This isn't quite theft, is it?
No, it's different, and that's where Section 314, dishonest misappropriation of property, comes in. This section defines the unlawful conversion of movable property to one's own use. The key differentiator from theft, S303, is that the initial acquisition of the property might be innocent, lawful, or simply by finding it. There's no dishonest intent at the moment of taking possession. The crime occurs later, when a subsequent dishonest intention to appropriate it for oneself forms, and the person acts on that intention.
So the dishonesty comes later.
Exactly. The punishment is imprisonment up to 2 years, or a fine, or both.
Right.
Now, explanation 2 to this section is really crucial, especially for dealing with finders of lost property. It clarifies the rules. Taking found property into your possession simply to protect it, or to try and return it to the owner, that is not an offense.
Okay, that's important.
But if the finder knows who the owner is or has the means to discover the owner, like finding a wallet with ID, or doesn't make reasonable efforts to find the owner and then appropriates the property for their own personal use, that becomes dishonest misappropriation under S315.
Right. So an example, you borrow a friend's book with their permission, maybe for a week. You were allowed to have it. The initial taking was lawful. But after the week, you decide, actually, I could use some cash, and you sell the book online for your own benefit without telling your friend.
That would be dishonest misappropriation under S313, not theft, because the initial taking was perfectly lawful and with consent. The dishonesty arose later with the decision to convert it to your own use by selling it.
Okay, and then there's Section 315, which seems like an aggravated form of misappropriation, specifically targeting property belonging to someone who has recently passed away.
Yes. S315 addresses the specific vulnerability of a deceased person's estate, particularly in the immediate aftermath of their death, before the property is lawfully claimed or taken possession of by heirs or legal representatives. It punishes anyone who dishonestly misappropriates property knowing it belonged to a deceased person at the time of their death and hasn't yet been possessed by someone legally entitled to it. The punishment is imprisonment up to 3 years, plus a fine.
And it's even more serious if the offender had a relationship with the deceased.
Yes, it's especially aggravated if the offender was employed by the deceased as a clerk or servant at the time of death. In that case, the punishment can extend up to 7 years. This recognizes the severe breach of trust involved when someone in that position takes advantage of the situation. The section aims to prevent the plundering of estates immediately after death, protecting the rightful heirs.
So the illustration is helpful here. Z dies, leaving furniture and some cash in their house. Z's servant, A, before any legal heir comes to take possession, dishonestly takes the cash for himself. A has committed this specific aggravated offense under S313, a serious breach of trust punishable by up to 7 years.
Exactly. It targets that specific window of vulnerability.
Okay, so we've explored how the law handles direct taking, theft, snatching, group violence, robbery, dacoity, attempts and preparations, and even these later dishonest conversions or misappropriations. Now let's turn to crimes involving the abuse of established trust in a more formal sense and the complex world of dealing with stolen goods after the initial crime. #VD. Trust betrayed and stolen goods, sections 316, 320. Right, the foundation of so many interactions, especially financial or professional ones, is trust. What happens when that trust is violated, specifically concerning property? This brings us to section 316, criminal breach of trust, or CBT.
Yes, criminal breach of trust, often abbreviated as CBT, is defined in Section 316. It's a broad and fundamental offense dealing with the dishonest abuse of entrusted power over property. The core elements are, first, there must be an entrustment of property or some kind of dominion or control over property given to the accused person. And second, that person must dishonestly misappropriate or convert that property to their own use, or dishonestly use or dispose of it in violation of any direction of law prescribing how that trust should be discharged, or any legal contract, express or implied, they made regarding the trust.
So it's about violating the terms of the entrustment.
Exactly. It also explicitly covers situations where the entrusted person willfully suffers or allows another person to commit such a breach of trust. It's a very broad definition, as you can see. It potentially encompasses public servants mishandling funds, bankers improperly using client money, agents diverting principals' assets, warehouse keepers selling goods they're meant to store, all sorts of situations. Explanation 2 even clarifies that if someone is entrusted with property without any specific directions on how to deal with it, but then dishonestly appropriates it, that can still be CBT. The key is the dishonest violation of the underlying trust relationship.
The illustrations in the act itself seem quite helpful again. Like a warehouse keeper, entrusted with furniture for storage, dishonestly sells it. That's CBT.
Classic example.
Or an agent, given money by their principal with instructions to invest in a specific company shares, instead dishonestly uses that money in their own personal business ventures. That's also CBT.
Yes. But crucially, illustration D provides a counterexample. It notes that if an agent disobeys the principal's directions, but does so in good faith, honestly believing it's for the principal's advantage, even if they're mistaken and it causes loss, it's not criminal breach of trust. Why?
Because the dishonest intent is missing.
Precisely. The mens rea, the dishonest intention, is absolutely paramount in establishing criminal guilt for CBT, just as with theft or misappropriation. An honest mistake, even if negligent, isn't usually enough for criminal liability here. And the general punishment for this offense, criminal breach of trust under Section 317, is imprisonment for a term which may extend to 5 years, or with a fine, or with both. The actual sentence imposed would likely depend on factors like the value of the property involved, the nature of the trust that was breached, the impact on the victim, and whether the offender held a position of particular responsibility, like a public servant or banker, which sometimes carry aggravated punishments under related sections, though S.317 gives the general baseline.
Okay, so that covers the breach of trust itself. Now, before we talk about receiving stolen property, we need a crystal clear definition of what actually is stolen property under the BNS. Section 318 defines this.
Yes. S318 provides a broad and crucial definition. Stolen property is defined as property whose possession has been transferred by any of 5 specific offenses: theft, extortion, robbery, criminal misappropriation, or criminal breach of trust.
So it covers property obtained through any of those primary property offenses we've discussed.
Exactly. What's fascinating and important for cross-border crime is its broad scope. This definition applies whether the original offense, theft, extortion, etc., was committed within India or without India.
So if something is stolen abroad and brought here, it's still legally stolen property under Indian law.
Yes. And importantly, the definition also clarifies when property starts being stolen. If such property subsequently comes into the possession of a person legally entitled to it, it then ceases to be stolen property.
Right. So let's illustrate that. A bicycle taken by theft is stolen property. Money obtained by extortion is stolen property. If jewelry is stolen in, say, Nepal, and then brought into India and received by someone here, it's still considered stolen property under S318.
Correct.
But if the police manage to recover that stolen bicycle or jewelry and return it to the original owner, it immediately loses its legal status as stolen property.
Precisely. That status is not permanent once legal possession is restored.
Okay, so now that we know what stolen property is, Section 319 targets those who knowingly deal in it, the people who create a market for illicit goods.
Right. That's the purpose, yes. S319 penalizes anyone who dishonestly receives or retains any stolen property, knowing or having reason to believe it to be stolen property. The punishment is imprisonment for up to 3 years or a fine or both.
The key phrase there seems to be knowing or having reason to believe.
Yeah.
How is that usually determined?
It's crucial, and often it has to be inferred from the circumstances surrounding the transaction. Things like, was the price paid unusually low for the item? Was the seller known to be of dubious character? Were there attempts to conceal the property or remove identifying marks? Did the receiver make any reasonable inquiries about the property's origins, especially if the situation seemed suspicious? A failure to inquire when circumstances demand it can contribute to having reason to believe.
So the law expects a certain level of diligence, or at least not willful blindness.
Exactly. You can't just turn a blind eye to obvious red flags.
So that example again, if you buy a brand new looking smartphone from a stranger in a pub for, say, 1/10 of its retail price, with no box, no charger, and the seller seems desperate to get rid of it quickly, even if you don't know for sure it's stolen, the circumstances arguably give you reason to believe. Your dishonest receipt, consciously ignoring those signs, could land you a charge under S.319.
That's a very plausible scenario where reason to believe could be inferred.
Okay, and just like with dacoity itself, there's an aggravated form for receiving property connected to it. Section 320. This is where the consequences get really severe.
Extremely severe. S320 deals with dishonestly receiving property stolen in the commission of a dacoity. This is an aggravated form of receiving, reflecting the inherent violence and organized nature of dacoity itself. The punishment here escalates dramatically. Life imprisonment or rigorous imprisonment for a term up to 10 years and also liable to fine.
Life imprisonment for receiving. Wow.
Yes. It covers 2 specific scenarios. First, dishonestly receiving property knowing or having reason to believe that it was obtained through the commission of a dacoity. Or second, dishonestly receiving stolen property from a person whom you know or have reason to believe belongs or has belonged to a gang of dacoities. It directly targets those who associate with, facilitate, or benefit from these dangerous organized criminal enterprises, aiming to cut off the financial incentives and support networks for dacoity.
So that jeweler example again. A jeweler frequently buys gold bars or jewelry from someone they personally know is a member of a notorious dacoity gang active in the region. The prices are suspiciously low, the circumstances are shady. That jeweler, having reason to believe the gold is loot from their violent robberies, or simply knowing the seller belongs to the gang, would be liable for these very severe penalties under S320. It's a clear message. Don't deal with dacoits or their spoils.
Absolutely. The law treats association with dacoity, even just through receiving stolen goods, with extreme gravity.
Okay, so we've traced the path of property from initial unlawful taking, theft, etc., through breach of trust, and now into its subsequent dishonest handling and receiving, especially when linked to serious crimes like dacoity. Now let's explore how the BNS addresses deception itself as a crime cheating, and also deliberate acts of damage to property, mischief, ## 6 o'clock, deception, damage, and habitual crime, sections 321, 325. Before we get to cheating, there's one more section related to stolen property, section 321. This seems aimed not at the one-off receiver, but at the professional criminals, the person whose actual business is dealing in stolen goods, the fence.
That's precisely who S.321 targets. This is a highly aggravated offense, dealing with those who habitually receive or deal in property which they know or have reason to believe is stolen property. The punishment reflects the seriousness of facilitating ongoing crime, life imprisonment or imprisonment for a term up to 10 years, and also liable to fine, same level as receiving dacoity property.
Life imprisonment again. So what does habitually mean here? Does it require many convictions?
Not necessarily prior convictions, although that would be strong evidence. Habitually implies a persistent course of conduct, a regularity of dealing in stolen goods that suggests it's part of their usual practice or livelihood, not just isolated incidents. The prosecution would need to prove this pattern of behavior.
Okay. So an example might be someone running, say, a pawn shop or a secondhand goods store who is known to regularly purchase goods from known thieves at drastically low prices, maybe keeping minimal records. If evidence shows multiple such suspicious transactions over a period of time, demonstrating a pattern.
Yes, that individual could potentially be prosecuted under S.321 for habitually dealing, facing those very severe penalties. It recognizes their crucial role in sustaining the entire ecosystem of property crime by providing a ready market for stolen goods.
Right. Now let's take that deep dive into deception itself. Section 322 defines cheating. What exactly constitutes cheating under the BNS? You mentioned it has two main components earlier.
Yes. Section 322 lays out the definition. Cheating occurs when someone, by deceiving any person, does one of two things. First, limn, fraudulently or dishonestly induces the person deceived to deliver any property to any person, or to consent that any person shall retain any property. This is about getting property through deception. Second limb, intentionally induces the person deceived to do or omit to do anything which they would not do or omit if they were not so deceived. And D, which act or omission causes or is likely to cause damage or harm to that person in body, mind, reputation, or property. This covers non-property harm caused by deception.
Okay, so it can be about property or other kinds of harm.
Exactly. And the explanation attached to the section is important too. It clarifies that a dishonest concealment of facts is also considered deception within the meaning of this section. So it's not just about telling outright lies. Intentionally hiding crucial information that would affect someone's decision can also amount to cheating.
It's about manipulating someone through falsehoods or concealment to gain an unfair advantage or cause them some form of specified harm. So, illustrative examples. Someone falsely pretends to be a high-ranking civil servant to persuade a shopkeeper to give them goods on credit, which they have no intention of paying for.
Yeah.
That seems to fit the first limb-inducing delivery of property fraudulently.
Yes, classic example.
Or maybe someone induces you to buy a painting by falsely claiming it's by a famous, celebrated artist when it's actually a cheap copy. You pay a high price based on this deception. This could fall under the second limb, as it's an intentional inducement to buy, causing likely harm to your property you overpaid.
That's another good example. It covers a wide range of fraudulent conduct based on deception.
Okay, then Section 323 seems to be an aggravated form of cheating. What if the person doing the cheating had a duty to protect the interests of the person they're defrauding, like a relationship of trust?
Yes, S.323 targets exactly that scenario. Cheating within a fiduciary relationship or where a duty of care exists. It applies when the person cheats with the knowledge that they are likely to cause wrongful loss to a person whose interest, either through law or a legal contract, they were bound to protect. The punishment here is higher than basic cheating, up to 5 years imprisonment, or a fine, or both. It specifically targets the abuse of trust inherent in relationships like lawyer-client, doctor-patient in some contexts, financial advisor-client, guardian-ward, etc. Defrauding someone you have a legal or contractual duty to protect is considered more serious.
So, a financial advisor persuading an elderly client to invest in a scheme the advisor knows is fraudulent, causing the client wrongful loss, while the advisor was legally bound to act in the client's best interest.
That would be a prime example potentially falling under S.323.
All right. Section 324 also deals with cheating, specifically linked to property or valuable securities. How is this different from the basic definition of the breach of duty section?
Section 324 provides a significant punishment up to 7 years imprisonment, plus a fine for what is often considered the most common form of serious cheating: using deception to directly obtain property or tamper with important documents. It focuses on the direct consequence of the cheating, dishonestly inducing the delivery of any property, or inducing someone to make, alter, or destroy the whole or any part of a valuable security, or anything which is signed or sealed and capable of being converted into a valuable security.
So it targets frauds that result in tangible financial loss or interference with significant legal documents.
Exactly. It protects against financially damaging frauds involving property transfer or valuable securities.
So an example, someone through elaborate false pretenses, maybe faking documents, telling lies about their business, induces you to pay them a large sum of money for a piece of land they have no authority to sell and no intention of ever transferring to you.
That's a clear violation under S.324.
Or maybe tricking someone into tearing up a promissory note that proves you owe them money. That would be inducing the destruction of a valuable security.
Yes, that would also fall under S.324.
Okay, shifting gears now from deception to direct damage to property. Section 325 defines mischief. This isn't theft, it's not cheating, but intentional destruction or impairment of property. So what constitutes mischief?
Mischief, under S.325, is defined fairly broadly. It occurs when a person causes the destruction of any property, or causes any change in any property or in its situation, such that it destroys or diminishes its value or utility or affects it injuriously. But critically, this must be done with the intent to cause, or knowing that they are likely to cause wrongful loss or damage either to the public or to any specific person.
So again, intent or knowledge of causing wrongful loss is key.
Absolutely. The mental element is essential. Now, explanation 1 clarifies something important. The intent doesn't have to be to cause harm specifically to the owner of the property. It's enough if the intent is to cause wrongful loss or damage to any person by injuring any property, whether it belongs to that person or not.
Okay, that broadens it. What about damaging your own property? Can that be mischief?
Yes, surprisingly perhaps. Explanation 2 explicitly states that mischief can be committed by an act affecting property belonging to the person who commits the act, or to that person jointly with others.
How does that work?
It applies if the act is done with intent to cause wrongful loss to others. The classic example, often cited, is someone setting fire to their own house, which they have insured, with the intent to defraud the insurance company.
Ah, so because it causes wrongful loss to the insurer, it's mischief, even though it's their own house.
Precisely. Or if you jointly own property with someone and deliberately damage it to spite your co-owner, causing them wrongful loss, that could also be mischief.
So simple examples. Deliberately throwing a stone and smashing someone's valuable mirror out of spite. That's mischief. Cutting the tires on a neighbor's car. Mischief. And that insurance fraud example, setting fire to your own insured property.
All clear examples of mischief, provided the intent to cause wrongful loss or damage can be proven.
Right. So from the intricate world of deception and fraud, we now move into offenses against the physical integrity and sanctity of property itself, from simple damage like mischief, right up to intrusions into your most private spaces, like your home. Let's get into trespass next.
Just to quickly cover the punishment for basic mischief first. For the general offense of mischief, as defined in S.325, the punishment under Section 326 is relatively moderate: imprisonment up to 3 months, or a fine, or both. This applies to less severe forms of deliberate damage, like, say, deliberately scratching someone's car paint out of malice. More serious forms of mischief, as we'll see, carry higher penalties.
Okay, so Section 327 is an aggravated form of mischief, specifically targeting the harming of animals. And interestingly, the law seems to apply different standards based on the type or value of the animal.
Yes, that's right. S.327 creates tiered protections for animals against acts of mischief, like killing, poisoning, maiming, or rendering them useless. There are essentially 2 tiers here. Tier 1 covers committing mischief towards any animal, or animals, of the value of 100 rupees or upwards. The punishment here is imprisonment up to 2 years, or a fine, or both. Tier 2 provides higher protection for certain specific valuable animals. The list includes elephant, camel, horse, mule, buffalo, bull, cow, or ox, irrespective of their monetary value. Or it also covers mischief towards any other animal, not on that specific list, which has a value of 500 rupees or upwards.
And the punishment for Tier 2 is higher.
Yes. For harming these specific or higher value animals, the punishment is imprisonment up to 5 years or a fine or both. This reflects perhaps both the economic importance of certain animals in agriculture and transport and maybe an element of greater protection afforded to them.
Section 328 seems very specific mischief involving irrigation works or diverting water. This sounds like it's aimed at protecting vital infrastructure, especially maybe in an agricultural economy.
Absolutely. S.328 penalizes committing mischief by doing any act which causes, or which the offender knows is likely to cause, a diminution of the supply of water for agricultural purposes, or for food or drink for humans or animals, or for cleaning, or for carrying on any manufacture. It also covers mischief that renders any public road, bridge, navigable river, or navigable channel impassable or less safe for travel or conveying property. Essentially, it punishes acts of mischief that damage vital public works or irrigation systems, with attendant injury or damage resulting from it. The punishment is imprisonment up to 5 years or a fine or both.
So this safeguards livelihoods and public welfare connected to water supply and infrastructure.
Precisely. An example could be someone deliberately cutting an opening in a canal embankment or distributary, wrongfully diverting water onto their own fields, and thereby causing damage or water shortage to downstream farmers who rely on that canal. That could fall under S.328.
Okay, now we get to the core definition. Section 329, criminal trespass. You mentioned earlier it's not just being on someone's property without permission. The intent is crucial. How does the BNS define this?
Exactly right on the intent. Criminal trespass under S.329 involves entering into or upon property in the possession of another. But critically, it must be done with intent to commit an offense or to intimidate, insult, or annoy any person in possession of such property. It also covers situations where someone, having entered lawfully onto property, then unlawfully remains there with the intent to intimidate, insult, or annoy, or to commit an offense.
So the criminal element comes from the malicious intent.
Yes. The focus is fundamentally on protecting possessory rights, the right of the person currently in possession, and punishing intrusions driven by a specific criminal or harassing intent. Simple trespass, like accidentally wandering onto someone's land without any of those specific intents, might be a civil wrong, giving rise to a lawsuit, but it wouldn't typically meet the definition of criminal trespass under S.2329. The law is looking for that ulterior wrongful motive.
Okay, so that's criminal trespass generally. But when that trespass happens in a special kind of place, it becomes the more serious offense of house trespass under Section 330. What makes a location special enough to warrant this aggravated designation?
S.330 defines house trespass as committing criminal trespass, meaning with one of those specified intents, by entering into or remaining in certain protected locations. These are 1. Any building, tent, or vessel which is used as a human dwelling. 2. Any building which is used as a place for worship. Or 3. Any building which is used as a place for the custody of property, like a warehouse or strongroom. So homes, places of worship, and secure storage places. Exactly. These are seen as needing a higher degree of protection due to privacy concerns, dwellings, sanctity, places of worship, or security needs, custody of property. And the explanation to S.330 clarifies something interesting about entering. The introduction of any part of the trespasser's body is enough to constitute house trespass.
So just putting your hand through an open window is enough? Yes, if done with the requisite criminal intent to commit an offense, intimidate, etc., just reaching a hand inside constitutes entering for the purpose of house trespass. It affords greater protection to these private and sacred spaces, and the difference in seriousness is reflected in the punishments. For general criminal trespass, defined in S.329, the punishment under Section 331 is relatively low. Imprisonment up to 3 months, or a fine up to 5,000, or both. But for house trespass, defined in S.330, the punishment under Section 332 is significantly higher. Imprisonment up to 1 year, or a fine up to 5,000, or both. This clearly reflects the increased seriousness the law attaches to invading these specifically protected spaces.
Okay, so house trespass itself is more serious. But what if the house trespass is just a step towards committing something even more horrific inside that protected space, like murder?
The law anticipates that dangerous scenario, too. Sections 333 and 334 impose extremely severe penalties when house trespass is committed in order to facilitate the commission of the most serious crimes. Section 333 deals with house trespass committed in order to commit any offense punishable with death. The punishment for this is life imprisonment or rigorous imprisonment for up to 10 years plus a fine. Section 334 deals with house trespass committed in order to commit any offense punishable with life imprisonment. The punishment here is imprisonment up to 10 years plus a fine.
So these target the preparatory act of trespassing for the most heinous crimes.
Exactly. Think of someone breaking into a home with the specific intention of committing murder or committing dacoity, which can be punishable by life imprisonment. These sections allow for severe punishment based on the trespass itself, driven by that incredibly grave ulterior intent, even if the final intended crime is somehow prevented or interrupted after the trespass occurs.
Now we get into even more specific types of aggravated house trespass. Section 335 defines lurking house trespass and housebreaking. These seem to involve either secrecy or using force to get in.
That's right. These are two distinct and highly aggravated ways of committing house trespass, forming the basis for even tougher penalties we'll discuss shortly. First, lurking house trespass. This is defined as committing house trespass, entering a dwelling, etc., with criminal intent, having taken precautions to conceal such house trespass from any person who has a right to exclude or eject the trespasser from the building, tent, or vessel. It's about stealth and secrecy. Second, housebreaking. This involves committing house trespass by effecting entry into the house or any part of it, or exiting from it, through one of 6 specific ways detailed in the section.
6 specific ways, like what?
They cover various forcible or clandestine methods. For example, entering through a passage made by the trespasser themselves, like digging under a wall, entering through any passage not intended for human entrance, like a drain pipe, or one they've opened by force, scaling or climbing over a wall or building, opening any lock not intended to be opened by the occupier, or effecting entrance or departure by using actual assault or threat of assault. Criminal force.
Okay, so breaking locks, climbing walls, using force. That's housebreaking.
Yes. And the basic punishment for either lurking house trespass or housebreaking under S335 itself is imprisonment up to 2 years plus a fine. But these definitions become the foundation for much more severe punishments when combined with other factors.
Right. So illustrative scenarios. A burglar enters Z's house late at night by carefully picking the back door lock and sneaking inside while everyone is asleep. That's likely lurking house trespass due to the precautions taken to conceal his entry. Another scenario. A thief smashes a window, reaches in to unlock the door from the inside, and enters. That entry through a passage opened by force would qualify as housebreaking.
Correct. Those are good illustrations of the two concepts.
Okay, so we have lurking house trespass, stealth, and housebreaking force method. Now imagine these aggravated trespasses combined with other aggravating factors, like the time of day or the specific intent. The penalties truly skyrocket here, don't they?
They absolutely do. The BNS creates layers of severity by combining these elements. Section 336, lurking house trespass or housebreaking plus intent to commit imprisonable offense. If someone commits lurking house trespass or housebreaking in order to commit any offense punishable with imprisonment, the punishment goes up to 3 years plus fine. But there's a specific focus here. If the intended offense is theft, the term under S.336 can extend to a staggering 10 years. This highlights how commonly theft is the motive behind these serious intrusions.
10 years just for breaking in with intent to steal. Wow.
Yes. Now add the time factor. Section 337, lurking house trespass by night or housebreaking by night. Simply committing either of these aggravated trespasses by night, defined as after sunset and before sunrise, increases the punishment to up to 3 years imprisonment plus fine. The element of nighttime itself is an aggravating factor, likely due to the increased fear, alarm, and vulnerability of occupants.
Okay, so nighttime makes it worse. Now combine nighttime and intent.
That leads us to the most severe combination in this category, Section 338. Section 338, lurking house trespass by night or housebreaking by night plus intent to commit imprisonable offense. This combines the worst elements, stealth or force, at night with the intent to commit another crime. The general punishment is up to 5 years plus fine. But again, if the intended offense is theft, the punishment under S338 can go up to an absolutely astounding 14 years imprisonment.
14 years?
Yes. This is one of the highest punishments for a property offense in the BNS that doesn't directly involve causing death or having life imprisonment as a possibility for the primary offense itself. It reflects the extreme gravity the law attaches to nocturnal intrusions specifically for the purpose of theft, understanding the profound violation and insecurity this creates for victims in their own homes.
14 years is huge. But what if these trespasses, already serious, escalate into outright violence and someone gets seriously hurt during the intrusion?
That scenario is covered by Section 339, and it's treated as an extremely grave offense. S339 states that if, whilst committing larking house trespass or housebreaking, any person involved in committing the offense voluntarily causes grievous hurt to any person or attempts to cause death or grievous hurt to any person, the punishment is life imprisonment or imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 10 years and also liable to fine.
Life imprisonment again for causing grievous hurt during a break-in.
Yes. This targets those dangerous situations where a property crime escalates into a violent confrontation resulting in serious injury. Grievous hurt includes things like permanent disfigurement, fracture, loss of sight or hearing, etc. It acts as a powerful deterrent against harming occupants, security guards, or anyone else who might interrupt or resist during such a trespass. The law says if you break in and seriously hurt someone, you could face life in prison.
So, an illustrative scenario. A burglar is breaking into a house at night, housebreaking by night. A security guard discovers them. The burglar panics, attacks the guard with a heavy tool, like a crowbar, causing multiple bone fractures, which would likely qualify as grievous hurt.
In that case, the burglar would be liable not just for the housebreaking by night, potentially with intent to commit theft up to 14 years under S338, but also under S339 for causing grievous hurt whilst committing it, potentially facing life imprisonment.
That really underscores the severe consequences of violence during property crimes. Okay. So, from the tangible world of physical intrusions, property damage, and the escalating scale up to housebreaking with violence, let's now venture into the more abstract, perhaps, but equally impactful domain of documents, records, and the grave crime of forgery. This feels like a shift from physical force to deception via documents.
Yeah.
Forgery. Section 340 gives us the foundational definition. What exactly constitutes forgery in the eyes of the law? It sounds simple, but I imagine the legal definition is quite specific.
It is specific, yes. Forgery, under Section 340, is essentially the act of making any false document or false electronic record, or even just part of one, but it requires a specific criminal intent. The making must be done with one of several listed intents. Intent to cause damage or injury, either to the public or to any specific person. Intent to support any claim or title. Intent to cause any person to part with property. Intent to enter into any express or implied contract. Or with intent to commit fraud, or that fraud may be committed.
So it's not just making something false, it's making it false with one of those bad intentions.
Exactly. It's fundamentally about protecting the authenticity and reliability of documents and records, both physical and electronic, and preventing their use for deceptive or fraudulent purposes that cause harm or undermine legal rights or transactions. It's a crime that strikes at the heart of trust in written and digital communication.
Okay, so S340 defines forgery based on intent. Then Section 341 provides a detailed roadmap, you could say, of how a document or electronic record can actually be considered false for the purpose of forgery. This seems critical for understanding the mechanics.
You're right. S.341 is crucial because it lays out the different ways falsity can be created. It defines when a person is said to make a false document or false electronic record. There are three main ways described. First, false attribution, Clause A. This is when a person dishonestly or fraudulently makes, signs, seals, executes, transmits, or fixes an electronic signature on a document, intending it to be believed that it was made, signed, sealed, etc., by someone else, or by the authority of someone else, when the person making it knows that the other person didn't actually do it or give that authority.
So pretending to be someone else, essentially.
Yes. Or falsely claiming authority. And importantly, as Explanation 1 clarifies, even signing your own name can constitute forgery under this clause if it's done with the intent that it be believed the document was made by a different person of the same name, or maybe by a fictitious person. It's about the false representation of authorship or authority. Second, material alteration, Clause B. This covers situations where someone without lawful authority dishonestly or fraudulently alters a document or electronic record in any material part after it has already been made or executed either by themselves or by someone else. Altering key details like dates, amounts, or names would be material alterations.
So changing an existing document dishonestly.
Correct. And third, deceptive procurement, Clause C. This is when someone dishonestly or fraudulently causes another person to sign, seal, execute, or alter a document or electronic record, knowing that the person doing the signing is incapacitated due to unsoundness of mind, intoxication, or because they've been deceived about the contents, and therefore doesn't understand the document or the nature of the alteration.
Taking advantage of someone vulnerable to get them to sign something falsely.
Precisely. And explanation 2 adds another layer, confirming that making a false document in the name of a fictitious person, intending it to be believed it was made by a real person, or in the name of a deceased person, intending it to be believed it was made by them during their lifetime, can also be forgery. The BNS has also thoroughly updated this definition, explicitly incorporating electronic signature and electronic record as defined in the Information Technology Act 2000, making it robust for the digital age.
That's vital. So illustrative scenarios from the Act itself are useful here. Creating a fake power of attorney document, giving yourself authority over someone else's property, illustration F. Or altering a check by changing the sum payable, illustration L. Or, that third clause example, inducing someone who is delirious from illness or heavily intoxicated to find a promissory note or a will they don't understand, illustration L. These cover the wide range of ways falsity can be introduced.
Yes, they provide very clear examples of each type of falsification. Now, the severity of punishment for forgery varies significantly, depending on the specific intent behind the act or the purpose for which the forgery is committed. The BNS sets out different levels. Section 342, General Forgery. This provides the baseline punishment for forgery where no other specific aggravated punishment is listed. It's imprisonment up to 2 years, or a fine, or both. This covers less grave forms of forgery. Section 345, Forgery for purpose of cheating. This is an aggravated form. If someone commits forgery intending that the document or electronic record forged shall be used for the purpose of cheating, as defined back in S322, the punishment increases significantly to imprisonment up to 7 years, plus a fine.
So forging a university degree certificate to deceive an employer into giving you a job you're not qualified for, that seems like forgery for the purpose of cheating.
Exactly. That would likely fall under S-Plea 455. Section 346, Forgery for purpose of harming reputation. Another aggravated form. Here, the forgery is committed intending that the document or electronic record shall harm the reputation of any party, or knowing it is likely to be used for that purpose. The punishment is imprisonment up to 3 years plus a fine.
So maybe creating a fake defamatory letter, supposedly written by a respected public figure, intending to ruin their reputation.
Yes, that would be an example fitting S.346. The intent to harm reputation is the key element.
Okay, so the punishment depends on the intent, but some documents are just so fundamental to public trust or legal rights or economic stability that forging them draws the most severe penalties, regardless of the specific type of cheating or harm intended.
That's absolutely right. The BNS singles out certain categories of critical documents for the highest levels of punishment for forgery. There are 2 main sections here. Section 343, forgery of record of court or of public register, etc. This section deals with forging documents that are crucial for public administration and the justice system. It covers forgery of a record or proceeding of a court of justice, or a register of birth, baptism, marriage, or burial maintained by a public servant, or any register kept by a public servant in their official capacity, or an official certificate or document made by a public servant, or any legal authority like a power of attorney.
So things like court judgments, birth certificates, official government records.
Exactly. Forging these undermines the very foundation of public record-keeping and legal processes. The punishment under S343 is imprisonment up to 7 years, plus a fine. And the explanation confirms that register includes electronic forms, too. Section 344, forgery of valuable security, will, etc. This, as we discussed briefly before, is arguably the most severe forgery offense in the BNS. The punishment is life imprisonment or imprisonment up to 10 years, plus a fine.
Life imprisonment for forgery. What specific documents does this cover?
It targets documents that create, transfer, extinguish, or restrict significant legal rights, especially financial ones. The list includes a valuable security like share certificates, bonds, promissory notes, a will or testament, an authority given to someone to make or transfer a valuable security or to receive principal interest dividends, an authority to adopt a son, or any document which purports to give authority to any person to receive or deliver any money, movable property, or valuable security, like an acquittance or receipt acknowledging payment or delivery.
So forging a will to claim an inheritance you're not entitled to, or creating fake share certificates to sell, or forging a receipt to falsely claim you've paid a large debt.
All of those would fall under the extremely serious category of S344, potentially leading to life imprisonment due to the profound impact such forgeries can have on property rights, inheritance, and financial systems.
Okay, so the law defines forgery, S341, how falsity is created, S341, and punishes the act based on intent or the type of document, S342, 346. What happens after a document is forged? Does the law target its mere existence or its use?
Both. The BNS addresses this in subsequent sections. Section 347, forged document or electronic record. This is primarily a definitional section. It simply states that a false document or false electronic record, as defined back in S341, which has been made wholly or in part by forgery, i.e. with one of the criminal intents specified in S340, is officially designated as a forged document or forged electronic record. It gives the fake document its legal label. Section 348. Using as genuine a forged document or electronic record. This is a very powerful and practical provision. It states that whoever fraudulently or dishonestly uses as genuine any document or electronic record which they know or have reason to believe to be a forged document or record,
They get punished out.
shall be punished in the same manner as if he had forged such document or electronic record.
Wow. So using the fake is punished just as harshly as making it.
Exactly. This means if you knowingly use a forged will, which falls under S344, punishable by life 10 years, you yourself could face life imprisonment or up to 10 years just for using it, even if someone else created it. This acts as a strong deterrent against the circulation and use of forged instruments. It aims to prevent the harm they can cause by making anyone who knowingly tries to pass them off as genuine equally culpable.
That makes sense. The law even goes a step further back, doesn't it? Into the preparatory stages, targeting the very tools used to commit forgery, like counterfeit seals or plates.
Yes, it does. Sections 349 and 350 deal with making or possessing the instruments of forgery, again with graded severity. Section 349, making counterfeiting seal, plate, etc. for general forgery. This section punishes making or counterfeiting any seal, plate, or other instrument for the purpose of committing forgery or possessing such an instrument knowing it's counterfeit and intending to use it for forgery. This applies if the forgery intended is punishable under sections other than the most serious ones, S.343 or S.344. The punishment is imprisonment up to 7 years plus a fine.
So this covers tools for general forgeries, maybe like a fake company stamp used for everyday fraud.
Exactly. Section 350, making counterfeiting seal, plate, etc. for grave forgeries. This is the aggravated form. It applies when the making, counterfeiting, or possessing of the seal, plate, etc. is done with the intent of committing a forgery punishable under the most serious sections S.343, Court Public Records, or S.344, Valuable Securities Wills. Here, the punishment is much higher, life imprisonment or imprisonment up to 7 years plus a fine. This reflects the proportionality of punishment striking hard at the means used to perpetrate major frauds that undermine public records or significant financial instruments.
Okay, so we've covered making the tools. To wrap up our dive into forgery, let's consider a couple more sophisticated ways these crimes can be facilitated or punished, like just possessing a serious forged document or counterfeiting official marks used for authentication.
Right, the law tries to cover these advanced aspects too. Section 351, having possession of grave forged documents with intent to use. This is similar to S.348, using a forged document, but focuses on possession before use. If you possess a document or electronic record described in the series categories of S.343 Court Public Records or S.344 Variable Security Will, knowing it to be forged, and intending that it shall be fraudulently or dishonestly used as genuine,
What's the consequence?
you are punished as if you had forged it yourself. So again, potentially life imprisonment or up to 10 years, just for possessing these high-impact forged documents with the intent to use them deceptively. It's a strong deterrent against retaining and potentially circulating these dangerous fakes. Section 352, counterfeiting device or mark for general document authentication. This section deals with counterfeiting a device or mark, like an official seal, a company logo, a watermark, used for the purpose of authenticating documents other than the grave ones described in S.3433344. The intent must be to use the counterfeit mark to give an appearance of authenticity to a document forged elsewhere or intended to be forged. The punishment is up to 7 years imprisonment plus fine.
So faking a less critical authentication mark.
Yes. Compared to Section 353, counterfeiting device or mark for grave document authentication. This is the most severe form in this category, carrying life imprisonment or imprisonment up to 7 years plus fine. It targets those who counterfeit devices or marks used for authenticating the most critical documents, those described in S.343 Court Public Records or S.344 Valuable Securities Wills. This is essentially creating the most dangerous tools, counterfeit authentication marks, for the most impactful forgeries of critical public or financial documents. The law treats this preparatory act with extreme gravity, matching the penalty for making the forgery tools themselves under S.350.
Wow, okay. From the most minor theft, where maybe community service is an option now, right up to the intricate details of forging a will or counterfeiting a seal for it, potentially facing life imprisonment. The BNS certainly provides a comprehensive, if complex, framework. And what's fascinating here, as you've highlighted, is how the law seems to anticipate and try to prevent or punish almost every step of a potential criminal act related to property or documents, with penalties really reflecting the potential harm involved at each stage.
That's a good summary. It attempts to create a coherent structure, building on past law, but also adapting and clarifying for modern contexts, with intent and potential harm being key drivers of severity. #tag outro.
So, what an incredible journey that was, digging deep into a significant chunk of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita 2023. We've seen how this new law, effective July 1st, 2024, meticulously defines everything from the nuanced intent required to prove religious insult, something the Supreme Court has already weighed in on, to that brand new offense of snatching, making street crime clearer perhaps, and then the escalating severity of crimes against property, from basic theft right up to dacoity, and finally culminating in the complex and critically important world of forgery and false documents. This isn't just a list of new rules, is it? It really feels like a reflection of how Indian society, through its lawmakers, is maybe evolving its understanding of crime, harm, and justice in the 21st century.
I think that's fair to say. We've truly explored how the BNS aims to modernize and clarify criminal law. It often builds on established principles from the old Indian Penal Code, yes, but it also introduces these new elements, adjusts definitions, and sometimes significantly strengthens penalties. And that consistent emphasis we kept seeing on mens rating, the guilty mind, the intent or knowledge of the accused, that's such a crucial thread running through almost all these provisions we discussed. It's this constant attempt to balance individual rights, including fundamental freedoms like freedom of expression, with the essential need to protect public safety, property, and social harmony. Hopefully, this deep dive has given you, our listeners, a much clearer understanding of how these foundational laws are designed, at least on paper, to protect you and your interests, and why they genuinely matter to the fabric of daily life and societal trust.
Absolutely. A huge thank you for guiding us through that complexity, and thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We really hope this exploration has given you plenty to think about and maybe a clearer picture of India's new legal landscape, particularly around property and faith.
You're welcome. Now, as the BNS 2023 starts to reshape Indian criminal law in practice, we've seen time and again today how critical intent is, whether it's proving deliberate malice in insulting religious feelings, or the preparation for a dacoity, or the dishonest state of mind behind forging a will. This raises, I think, a really important question for all of us moving forward. In an age of digital actions, deepfakes becoming more convincing, anonymous online interactions, and generally blurred lines between thought, speech, and action. How will our courts continue to define and, perhaps more importantly, prove criminal intent beyond a reasonable doubt? Especially when the consequences, as we've seen, can be so incredibly grave: life imprisonment, even death, and the evidence of that internal state of mind is often so intangible, so easily manipulated, or perhaps even impossible to definitively capture. It's a challenge, I believe, that will profoundly shape the future interpretation and application of criminal justice, not just in India, but globally. Something to think about.